And welcome back to part two of our deep dive review into the musical of Oliver. We hope you had a great week and that you've had a chance to on and hopefully listen to a recording of the show, or maybe you 1968 Best Picture film version of the musical, starring Ron Mooney and Shani Wallace. Now, here we go. So, Lynn, you are our guest. So, what is your first of your top three songs?
Pick a pocket or two.
Why should we break our backs stupidly paying tax? Better get some untaxed income. Better pick a pocket or two. You've got to pick a pocket or two. Boys, you've got to pick a pocket or two. Sing, boys.
Why should we all break our backs? Better pick a pocket or two.
Charlie, take your hat off while you're in class.
Did not make my list, but it's one that was close to it. There's another favorite song I like.
I love that because it does establish the whole attitude of Fagin, and it makes him comedic, it makes him intelligent, it makes him whimsical in a way. He's smart, he's always working, he's always thinking. And I thought that this was a wonderful way of establishing his character, even though the musical is called Oliver.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. And what's neat about the song is it's one of the things that this musical does well is that it mixes the tone with this upbeat comedic melody where he's talking, they're talking about robbing old men and tripping, and you see them tripping Fagin and doing all these fun choreographical comedic, which normally you'd think this and go, oh my goodness, like that's awful. They kicked an old man's cane out from under his hands to trip him. But it's fun. And the song is infectious. Like you want to go pick a pocket or two. Like it's so immediate. It hooks you.
But it's also about survival.
Yeah.
He's teaching them how to survive.
Yes.
And, you know, it's funny, in this life, one thing counts, in the bank, large amounts. I'm afraid these don't grow on trees. Right? Like he's very realistic.
Yes.
Like, I mean, kids today should learn that money doesn't grow on trees. You know what I'm saying?
Tell me about it.
Teaching them to have a work ethic. And I love that. I love it.
Gribb's Robin Hood, which is another great English folk hero, where he's like, yeah, he was a crook, but he gave away all his freaking money. If he's going to subscribe to some charity, subscribe to mine. Like, give me the money you're going to steal.
Yeah.
It's great, and it's Bart doing his great witty lyrical fun with this number, and it sets up that whole world. You're right, Lynn. Like the minute you see the song, you're like, okay, I know the world that I'm going to be in with Fagin. This is.
But it also stresses the necessity of the poor, and like poverty in Victorian London, especially in that area, like St. Giles, that whole area of London, it was awful. Like the extreme poverty, extreme and mass amounts of poverty. And I think he helped those kids to survive.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's what his purpose was.
Yes.
He was helping, and he was surviving himself.
It's like Lynn talked about. What jobs did they have back then? A Jewish person, not many. So it works. It totally works. It's great. And yeah, no, it's fantastic. Great choice, Lynn. A great way to kick this off. Autumn, what is your number one?
All of them. No, just kidding. My number one is As Long as He Needs Me.
Long as he needs me, I know where I must be. I'll cling on steadfastly as long as he needs me, as long as life is long. I love him right or wrong, and
did not make my list, but like that's the ballad of the show.
I mean, the
I love my
problem with this song is it's rarely done correctly. It's like, oh, here's this big belting number. Listen to me sing. But it's complex. It's a struggle. It's like all of those. It's a great domestic abused woman song. Like
Yeah.
what? Like there's this palpable. How she keeps feeding the cycle, and she's feeding the cycle because she doesn't know how to escape it.
Yeah.
And what does she do if she escapes it? And as long as he needs her, is that like she's asking herself, is it enough? It's a great number.
Yeah. And it inspired so many other great songs we will see later down the musical canon line, like I Dreamed a Dream, On My Own.
Oh yeah.
Like this was like the catalyst song that people all tried to emulate going forward. Because up to then we never had it. Like think Carousel. Julie Jordan does not really have a song like As Long as He Needs Me. Even though both characters are victims of domestic abuse, Nancy is the one that gets that.
Well, you get what you get. You'll Never Walk Alone. It's just not
her
Julie
song.
that sings it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
it's
Fowler sings that one.
to Julie in a way, right?
Exactly.
It's
But that's what we can dive deep like this one. Like this one, you're right. It's from the abuser's perspective, where which had never been done before. Like my dad remembers seeing the movie and seeing, first of all, Bill Sykes hit Nancy and strike her. Like that terrified him. But then he says the song broke his heart. Watching Shani Wallace sing the song, watching Bill walk away. Like it's a heartbreaking moment of the show. And you're right, people shouldn't just come down stage and just belt their heart out. Like this is a moment that it's still quiet. It's a still quiet moment that you build to this defiant moment of,
If you are lonely, then you will know when someone needs you, you love them so. I won't betray his trust, though people say I must. I've got to stay true and just as long as it needs
But she's convincing herself.
yes.
That is this song. She is convincing herself to stay.
Yes.
And that's what most people miss in interpreting this song. You know, the character of Nancy was actually based originally by Dickens on the murder of Eliza Grimwood.
Oh.
And it was something that haunted Dickens like throughout his whole life. It was one of the major things that haunted him till his death. And she died at the hands of her lover, whose name was William Hubbard.
Oh, Bill. There you go.
Horrific. Yeah. It was horrific. He slit her throat, and it was a very graphic scene. Probably something akin to what people saw with Jack the Ripper, right?
Yeah, and
it was
a book scene. It's very graphic.
Yeah, and it is.
What do you think of As Long as He Needs Me?
Who, me?
Yeah.
That was my second song.
Perfect.
I look at this song, and of course, I am, from a modern point of view, I am horrified by this song. I totally understand her point of view that she is totally deluded in thinking that this bully, this domestically violent man who keeps on beating her up, is deluding herself into thinking that he needs her. And it's heartbreaking, as you say. And I agree with Autumn that she's trying to convince herself that he needs her, that I'm going to stay true, just. And even then, in angry, poor London, there are people who say, leave him. You've got to leave him.
Mhm.
And she won't do it because she's deluding herself into thinking that he loves her and he needs her. And she finally does leave him when he kills her.
Yeah.
So it's a loaded song
Mhm.
that it taken out of context, it can be a love song that you can look at without knowing the basis and the context of it.
Mhm.
But in the context of the musical, it's devastating. It's heartbreaking. It's aggravating. You want to kill her because she doesn't see that he's going to kill her. You
I
know?
Well, I think she know. I think there is a piece of her that knows, but I
Why
think
do you
there's
think that?
um
Well, it's in the reprise where she knows it's going to happen.
As long as he needs me, I know where I must be. But will he never see that someone else needs me? As long as life is long, I love him right or wrong, but something just as strong says someone else needs me. A child with no one to take his part. I'll take his part, Bill, but cross my heart.
yeah.
Okay.
I think she
Sorry, you're right.
yeah.
That
Yeah.
end for her.
I think anyone in that situation knows.
Okay.
Like I'm not going to go into details, but there is a knowledge that is present when someone is being abused in whatever way.
Mhm.
There's a danger, but there's also this belief that you can affect change. And
Yeah.
I think Nancy and Bill Sykes is also complicated. Like yes, he is an abuser. He is. But we can't just call him a villain. We
Yeah,
have to
who
look
was
at
the
the
one who did
grain,
it to him? Who was the one who did it to
exactly,
him? It
right?
has to come from someplace else.
There's a
And
pattern.
so, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So she sees that part of him that she gets that glimmer of hope. There's hope. There's hope in the cycle.
Mhm.
And I think that um, perpetuates that song and her still convincing herself
Mhm.
that he needs her and that she has to stay.
Yeah.
yeah,
And that is the tragedy
Mhm.
of the whole musical at the end. And and it's in the Dickens thing too. Like this guy William Hubbard, he was the one that called the cops after he
Oh.
killed his lover. Yeah.
wow.
So I mean, it's a complication that is, ugh, you know, it is very much about class. And in all our conversations about um, isms today, we forget to talk about class.
Mhm.
And it's the number one factor for most of the things that are happening,
Mhm.
you know? So I think this musical does that well.
Agreed. And so yeah, so as long as he needs me, great song. As Lynn, as you said, it's multifaceted. It can either like clearly Bart knew what he was doing when he wrote this song because it is one of the most covered songs of the musical theater canon that people do on like their solo albums and everything. Like he wrote a great single track and also works as a great character building soliloquy song and also kind of an I want song for Nancy in the show.
Yeah,
Like I don't know if either Fine Life or As Long as He Needs Me is her I Want song because in Fine Life at least she talks about what she wants with Bill Sykes, and I think this is more of a soliloquy where she's having to build herself up. So my first choice though is
yeah.
Oliver.
What'll he do in this terrible stew? He'll rue the day somebody named him Oliver.
Oliver, Oliver, never before some decorum restore, I implore. Let us face this case. It's unprecedented quite utterly. He's disgraced this place.
And encouraging others to wallow in gluttony.
Oliver, lock him in jail and then put him on sale for the highest bid. That's a minute of
The song sung by Widow Corney and Mr. Bumble. It was the first song that I really because as I learned Where Is Love for the audition for Talk Is Free, but then when I listened to the album, this was the first song that I really kind of clicked it for me, and I went, "Oh, this is great!" And it was the catchy tune that really got me first. But then when you actually listen to the lyrics of what Bumble and Corny are talking about, it's awful. It's very Dickensian, like what they're talking about, like either shoving Oliver up a chimney for a year or throwing him down into like a pit to feed on cockroaches served in a canister. Like,
Okay, let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. Do you think those characters, those two common characters, would ever use the word rue the day?
Bumble might. I think Bumble might. I think Bumble is enough of up in class enough that he has some language.
Okay, fair enough.
I think language was different. I think our modern take on like language is a dying skill.
It is.
Like it's something that is a dying art form, I'm afraid. But back
then,
I would,
you get a character, and because it was 1960, and I would say I know that Mr. Bart has done other musicals, etc., but he was not as adept. He didn't quite understand a lot of the technicality, the mechanics of the musical. He's got that fantastic first number, but in musicals recently, and of course we have Mr. Sondheim as the great instructor, who says that you have to have lyrics for the character.
Yeah.
So therefore, when Mr. Sondheim wrote the lyrics for West Side Story, which he hangs his head in shame, he says he gave internal rhyming to a woman who didn't understand English. So that's wrong. I look at Evita, for example, the song sung by the mistress who doesn't even warrant a name, and Tim Rice has her doing internal rhyming of saying things like, I'm immune to gloom, and I'm thinking, honey, in 1,000 years you wouldn't know what that meant. And so you have to look at the lyrics and say, do you know what you're talking about, and why am I listening to this? And while it does take us, it makes us suspend our disbelief, lying on the floor in total incredulousness should not be an option.
No, I agree. I agree. But I do think in that time period, they probably would say the word rue.
I have no problem with the word rue. I have the problem with who would say it. But as Max says, Mr. Bumble would probably know the word. So that worked for me.
Yeah.
Widow Corney, maybe not as much, but has the much simpler verse of the song. It is more a choral singer of the song, while Bumble is the one that kind of gives all these awful suggestions of what they're going to do to Oliver. And also, the song is really also holding a mirror up to our governmental support systems that we have, where oversight is huge. Like what Bumble and Corny are doing, where they're feasting on luscious feasts, and these kids are on maggoty-filled gruel.
That's right.
It's like it's huge oversight, and the fact that this abuse by these caretakers would happen, and nobody cared about these workhouse boys.
It still happens.
She
still happens.
She's Mrs. Lovett in a different time period.
Yes. She's very much another Mrs. Lovety type.
They're opportunists.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, she's like
they are the Macbeths.
Yeah.
They are the Macbeths.
They're the Macbeths. They're the innkeeper and his wife from Les Mis, Monsieur and Madame Thénardier. They're Mrs. Lovett. Like they're all those types of characters, and
But each one of them has a very good reason for being that way.
Yeah.
Like they're not like even the Macbeths had a very good reason.
yeah,
Iago had a very good reason if played correctly,
yeah,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
We just can't see these people as villains, right? Because
Right.
they're not. They're just not.
Well, the goal of any time when you're directing somebody who's supposed to be the quote unquote villain of the story is you have to work with them and make sure they understand that they don't ever see them like Mr. Bumble never sees himself as a villain. He's a businessman. He is a man trying to run a job of having to. It's kind of like Miss Hannigan, where it's like your job is being stuck around kids all day.
I don't think he's trying to run a business. I think he's trying to climb the ladder. I
Yeah.
think they're two very different things.
Yeah.
I think he is a ladder climber. He's a Malvolio. Again, a Malvolio.
Yeah.
Mm.
And
And
ultimately,
Malvolio can be a hated character, but it's not.
he's one of the most sympathetic characters I find in 12th Night. I
It's-
love Malvolio.
It's
Yeah.
complicated.
Yeah. But yeah, that's my number one. So Lynn, what is you said your number two was As Long as He Needs Me.
Yes.
Autumn, what's your number two then?
It's a fine life.
If you don't mind having a go without things, it's a fine life. Though it ain't all jolly old pleasure outings, it's a fine life. When you got someone to love, you forget your care and strife. Let the prudes look down on us, let the wide world frown on us. It's a fine, fine life.
Did not make my list, but I do talk about it down the road for another song that ties into it. But I love It's a Fine Life.
I do too. I mean, it's
Gorgeous.
looking at the glasses, half full.
Yeah.
And in extreme circumstances, what Nancy's enduring, she's still trying to find the positive.
Yeah, like that one
And-
song captures her. It's her. Like you get who
And it's also taking the piss out of the upper classes.
absolutely.
Like tea and crumpets who need
Yeah.
all the excess. It's a commentary on excess.
Yes.
In a way, right? I'm living a fine life.
Yeah.
And as in so many people, and even myself, I'm like, oh, I wish I had more money. Blah, 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 blah. I'm like, I'm living a great life. I don't need more money. What I think, we all need is stability and security. And I think that is
One thing she doesn't have.
well, in a way she does. She has a stable relationship in whatever way you want to look at that. There is a sense she has a man.
Yeah.
It's important, right? Within the inner workings of it is not stable.
Right.
But there is a societal stability there. She works with Fagin. She tends bar. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, there's money coming in. And there's always rich people's pockets to nab.
Right.
Always.
And I love
they don't care. They
Yeah.
don't care.
And I love what they did in the film version, where they moved the song out of the Fagin's den into the bar, where it takes place right after you've met Bill Sykes, and you get to see Nancy doing her daily routine of getting him soup, getting him bread, moving through the bar,
Being part of a community of people like her.
Yes, like I don't know who wrote the screenplay for the film version. I don't know if Bart actually did it. He may have, but whoever did a great job adapting that song for film. It works, and it's fantastic.
I agree.
What do you think of Fine Life? Is it a fine song?
Yeah, I like the irony of it. Didn't make my top three. I like the irony of it more than I like, say, Papa, which is on my least, the ones that I would skip. Papa says the same thing, really, in a way, and you need something lighthearted to open up Act Two. I'm thinking, not in my world, but still, I can understand the point of view in 1960.
We'll get to Papa. It's coming. We got some Papa coming our way.
Okay.
So, Mac, what's your second favorite song?
Reviewing the situation.
I'm reviewing the situation. I must quickly look up everyone I know. Title people with a station who will help me make a real impressive show. I will own a suite at Claridge's and run a fleet of carriages and wave at all the duchesses with friendliness as much as is befitting of my new estate. Good morrow to you, magistrate. Oh, good. I think I'd better think it out again. So where shall I go? Somebody? Who do I know? Nobody. All my dearest companions have always been villains and thieves. So at my time of life, I should start turning over new leaves.
That like I could. Did either of you have it on your lists?
Yes,
I got it as my third.
Me too.
Perfect. Okay,
Yeah.
so we all got one together.
Yeah.
Ain't that a nice thing? Yeah, I call this the dark version of If I Were a Rich Man. Because they're both very similar melodically. Like if you think, I'm reviewing the situation. If I were a rich man. Like they have very similar melodic lines. And they're both basically talking about the similar things. Just Tevye is talking about wanting to elevate him and his family to a better social economic life. Fang is just wanting to move up the ladder for himself and save his own neck, basically. And
I think I don't even think it's like, I don't think it's malicious in any way. I think it's a dream. Like he's dreaming of just, it's his somewhere that's green.
Yeah.
it is also, but also if you look at where it comes in the show, which is after Oliver's back in the Fine Life of Reprise, where he sees his world falling apart, where he knows where he knows it's all coming to an end with Nancy and Bill. Like this is his moment of, what do I do? Because the original title of the song was "There's not a lot of business in crime," and it's the whole thing of, what do I do? And it's a two-pronger. It's him doing a true Shakespearean to be or not to be soliloquy, and it's the 11 o'clock number of the show. And
it's back and forth. It's his oh shit moment.
It's
That's
really
what it is. And it's like, now what do I do? It is the internal struggle.
And it's tragic. It's that comedic melody mixed with really sad lyrics where he's wondering, who's going to care when I die? Like, who's going to mourn me or anything? Like, am I just a body, basically, that once I'm gone, I'm gone? There's that legacy question that we talked about in Fiddler, coming back again with Fagin going, what am I doing? Like,
but if you look at Tevye in comparison, both men are consumed with the idea of family, right? And like the idea of betraying family, or family betraying them, and what's going to become of me? Who's going to take care of me when I'm old? You know, the idea of loneliness. Tevye loses so much of his daughters when they're forced to leave, right? It is about family. And I think in reviewing the situation, he's grappling with that. He's grappling with huge things. And what is remarkable about this song is that he is a lower class hero in many ways. Like, we're rooting for him. We're rooting for him. Just like in The Wire, we root for Omar. Right? Or even Stringer Bell. We root for these guys because we see their redemptive qualities, and that they're more like us than, we sometimes don't want to admit.
Yeah, like it's also neat that most soliloquy songs start with a question, and then they answer the question by the end. Like if you look at Valjean's soliloquy, where it's the what have I done? He starts with what am I going to do? What have I done? And he answers it with I'm going to break my parole and go and change my life. Javert's suicide soliloquy ends with him asking, what world am I living in? And ultimately he jumps off a bridge. And even Billy Bigelow in his song Soliloquy, he answers his question of what do I do with my child? He goes, well, I'm going to have to break it, make it, do something to provide for my child. Fagin doesn't answer the question. He ends it with, I think I better go think it out again. Like his whole final verse is,
I don't want nobody hurt for me or made to do the dirt for me. This rotten life is not for me. It's getting far too hot for me. Don't want no one to rob for me. But who will find a job for me? There is no in-between for me. But who will change the scene for me? I think I'd better think it out again.
That's his answer. That's his answer.
Yeah.
which is the final
But
line?
he has to rethink it. He
But
doesn't
that-
have to have a
his question,
solution.
What's he going to do with his life?
He has to rethink it. That's
Mhm.
all.
Oh, that's a neat way to look at it.
I don't think any soliloquy song or any soliloquy ever answers itself fully. I think the beauty of a soliloquy is that it is it is exploring the curiosity of a character, right? Billy Bigelow doesn't come to an answer. He thinks he does, but he's left going,
How do I do it?
yeah, he's at
Bigelow's an idiot. Billy Bigelow had two chances at redemption, and he screwed up both of them. He's a fool.
Great. Okay, so
reviewing this situation. We'll review the carousel situation at a later time.
we will talk.
Holy-
Lynn, I think we may definitely have to have you come on and join us for that episode.
Oh my God. Okay, fine.
So prep your notes.
You're a mainstay
Oh
guest
my-
now.
Jeez.
Which I love. My third choice, because both of your third choices were reviewing the situation. My third choice is Lynn, as she alluded to, one of the songs she does not like in the show, but I absolutely adore, which is Pa Pa.
Okay.
Opening to Act 2. And okay, so I'll go through it first, and then we can bash it after. That's how we do it when we have lists, when we have songs that are on opposing lists. We go through the positives, then we hit the negatives. So I like it.
Review.
Right.
Good review.
Right?
Yeah.
Listen.
See, there you go. Yeah, okay. So this song, first up for me, it's interesting how it depicts our idealized version of Victorian Dickensian London, where it's all these lower class people in the East End singing a bar song in a bar, like doing the swing the glass, like it's that, like it totally captures our idealized version of that, which is great. It's a moment that's pulled right out of the 1948 film, where a lady by the name of Lucy in that film sings a little ditty in the bar that distracts Sykes while Nancy tries to get away. And then the melody, and then on top of that, it's a great opening to Act 2, because it doesn't advance the plot in any way, but it also gets the audience back into the Dickensian world they left at the end of Act 1, without having to worry about audiences coming in late and missing an important plot point. Because you don't want to open Act 2 with My Name, because if audiences miss that song, they miss Bill Sykes. So you need
How
a
many
song.
how many people do you think are going to come in late from intermission?
You never know. It depends on the washroom line. I've been at many a Mervis show where people come in late.
Okay, fair enough.
So you
Okay.
need a song that will give that leeway to get people back into the show. And
Okay.
yeah, and the lyrics, once again, they're the tightrope walk where on one hand it's a jaunty bar tune, but if you actually listen to what they're talking about, it's depressing. Like you got the plights of like Mr. Percy Snodgrass, who is a depressed drunk who is drinking himself to death as he
Mhm.
dreams of becoming an earl. Or you have what's her name, Pretty Little Sally, who is a prostitute who gets taken advantage of by a man, and that leaves her broken and destitute. Like you have all these characters that Nancy's describing that are like in horrible situations, but it's like, it's okay, it's papa. And it's that mislead to the audience as well, where they go, oh, this is like, consider yourself, this is what we've already known. They have no idea what's coming in like 10 minutes in like later, where you have Bill Sykes arrive and you get the first abuse of Nancy, where she gets smacked by Bill, and then you get As Long as He Needs Me, where the tone totally does a 180 on you from that happier, dark tone of Act One to a this is getting bleak in Act Two. Like this is not going to end well situation. And Papa does that really neat kind of walk the line, and it's like a lovely ladies or a master of the house, where it's two different things happening at once. And my last positive point is that when they did the film, they did a great adaptation of this once again, where normally if you were adapting this for the screen, you may cut Papa because there's no real plot point to it. But they made it a plot point where it bookends Nancy for the character, where beginning of the movie, she sings Fine Life in the bar, and you get the setup of her and Bill in the bar doing her singing her song. And then in the second part of the movie, she sings another bar song, but this time it's a distraction to get Oliver out of the bar into Mr. Brownlow. And you see her using her resource of being kind of the bar singer to kind of get her out, get Oliver out. And it's that flip switch. And it's great. It's a great adaptation of that song. I love how they do it in the movie because it totally works.
I think Fine Life though is a better song.
Oh, it absolutely, it's a better song. It's more plot important because it talks about her
Mhm.
relationship with Bill. Papa is just a fun, whole
Well,
playful.
it's a music. It's like it's a musical song.
Yeah.
Like based it on music, like Tarara Boom Die kind of
Yes.
thing, right?
Mhm.
Where this is what they used to like get rowdy with in pubs, and everything was about sex and drinking.
Yep.
So that's why I don't think the Percy Snodgrass and things like that I don't think it's meant to be depressing. I think it's just them taking the piss, essentially, like they did in musical songs.
Mhm.
Whereas Fine Life is her trying to convince herself that it's okay. Like I have a fine life, right?
Yeah.
See, I've got everything.
Mhm.
Whereas it's a big production number to start the act.
And it's a production number that works, unlike their other big production numbers, which we will get to on my
Yeah.
other list. Where I
Yeah,
like,
you're right. It does.
So-
It takes us back into the world. It takes us back into, the satire of that music hall that was sort of like Vauxhall Gardens kind
Yeah.
of feel.
Mhm.
But I don't know if it's a great number.
It's
but
one
I
of my
do
faves.
understand your point. I do understand. Yeah, you love the fun song, so
I do. That's one of
it's
my.
always a fun song, Lynn.
Yeah.
Always.
Okay. Good to know.
Yeah. True.
Lynn, Papa, your notes. Give it to us. How did it end up on your other list?
I just thought it was frivolous, in a musical that had made light of a terrible situation. I do have to keep on reminding myself it was done in the 1960s.
Mm-hmm.
I have to remind myself that Lionel Bart was mainly a composer, creator of pop songs. This was that the musical theater language was not necessarily um, he was not comfortable or familiar with it. So you've got your director, etc. It just, as I'm looking at it from 2020, it just seems silly. And we had other songs that did a better job of being silly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Now we're into our top 3 songs we either skip or would cut. Lynn, we know your number 1 is Papa.
No, it isn't actually.
Oh, what's your number 1?
And my number one for and this it has an explanation. My number one is My Name.
Strong men tremble when they hear it. They've got cause enough to fear it. It's much blacker than they smear it. Nobody mentions my name.
Ooh, did not make my list. That almost made my other list, though.
Okay, and I'll tell you why. When I saw this in the theater, it was terrifying to me.
Mm-hmm.
It was terrifying. When I got the album and played it at a regular volume, when you come up with the downbeat, etc., it was terrifying to me hearing it for the first time. So every single time I've played it or listened to it, I know it's coming and I turn down the volume. I won't skip it because it says everything about him. I guess in a way it should have been in my top 3 because it says everything about him, that he is he's so terrifying that people won't even say my name. They won't even say Bill Sikes. But when that younger version of me heard it for the first time, it scared me. And it scared me when I first heard the album. And I have this kind of Pavlov's dog reaction to it. So as I look at it in more maturity, considerably more maturity, then it's a wonderful song that sets up who this character is. It just scares me, and I'm all I'm thinking about is being scared. You know, when you hear thunder or lightning or whatever, and that I put that as my first song for reason. You know, yeah.
I love it. And the fact that it scares you is just what it's meant to do. It works for a stage. Because don't forget, we haven't seen Bill Sikes in Act 1. Most musicals, like especially the Rodgers and Hammersteins, your villain is set up in Act 1. You would get the villain song maybe 3rd or 4th song into the show. We've had to wait until top of Act 2 to introduce our villain of the piece. Or, sorry, Autumn, villain, air quotes. Villain of the piece, and it's a great opening. Like Autumn and I were talking about this yesterday after recording our episode about how this song terrified me being in the show. Like we had, do you know Milosh from Talk Is Free? I don't know. I don't know if you ever saw him. He did Ivan and a whole bunch of stuff. But he played Bill Sikes, and he was one of the nicest men I ever knew. But he would come onto the scene. And there was just something about that he got into for that part. And it was scary. Like, you ran in fear of Milosh in that scene. And same thing with Oliver Reed. Like, when you watch the film, they kept the song, but you didn't need the song on screen because you got all of Bill Sikes in a close-up. On stage, you don't get that close-up shot that you get Oliver Reed. But you still get that. Like, my dad was scared of Oliver Reed. Even reading some of the background stories of the movie, all the kids were scared of Oliver because he stayed in character off screen. So all the kids were terrified of him. Like, it's a great, scary song. Like, when he comes in, that you're right, that first boom, that first downbeat is such a jarring moment from Papa, which is why Papa is also a great lead into that song, because it lulls you into that da 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 da, and then there's that jarring downbeat of him coming in, and it's like, what just happened? The lights change, everything changes. It's so good. Autumn, I know you love my name. I don't know why I didn't make your top 3.
I don't know why either, because for me it's just like this man who has people have built him up, whether I don't know. Like, he is a bad dude. He is a bad dude.
All the work has been done for him before he gets on stage.
Yeah.
everything done for him, and so all he has to do is appear.
That's it.
And it's
And
there you go.
And I think he feels he has this obligation that he has to live up to his name.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. It's such a machismo thing, the name. Do you know what I mean? Like there is this thing about the name and the name serving as a legacy, right?
Yeah.
And I think Bill feels this obligation to live up to this name. And I think I think that weighs on him.
It does. And
done correctly, it has to weigh on him. And I think he has done terrible things, but I also think that he holds the burden of that. I think that makes him really complex. I don't think we get to see a lot of Bill Sikes portrayed the way I view him. But I think I think there is a burden attached to him saying, he says, his lyric is,
Rich men hold their £5 notes out, saves me emptying their coats out. They know I could tear their throats out just to live up to my name.
so it's something that he has to keep perpetuating.
Okay.
So he doesn't lose street cred. And what would be the ramifications if he lost his street cred?
He dies. Somebody like the next well, it's that classic drug world underworld situation where once the kingpin shows weakness, they get booted out, and the next person comes up the line.
That's right. That's right. Classic.
Mm-hmm.
Classic Greek in nature, right?
Lynn, a great choice.
A great choice. I understand it is terrifying, but I think it becomes even more terrifying if it's something he feels he has to maintain, rather than I'm just a bad dude. Because then you realize his stakes are in place and there's an urgency behind the song. So
Yeah.
I put it as equal with reviewing the situation because I think they serve a similar purpose.
Okay.
Well done. Okay, Autumn, what is your first song of your list of cut or skip?
You're gonna love me for this. Are you ready?
Ready.
And I'm saying this song because again, it's one of those ones that becomes very schmaltzy very quickly. Consider yourself.
Consider yourself, consider yourself, one of the family. We've taken to you so strong. It's clear we're going to get along. Consider yourself, well in. Consider yourself, one of the furniture. There isn't a lot to spare. Who cares whatever we got to share? If it's a chance to be, we should see some holidays. Empty holidays, wine rounds. Always a chance to meet somebody to put the bill. Then the drinks are on the house.
That was my number 2.
And look, I understand why it's there. It does serve a purpose. The Artful Dodger is just that. He's artful and he's a dodger. Unfortunately, the way this is done, the way it's a big production number, takes away from the menace and the conniving nature of this character. And he's got to be a little wily. Like he's portrayed as this very cute kid with a top hat, and we don't get to see his artfulness in this number. Like it's like, oh, I can give you some hot dogs and a place to live. Okay. Do you know what I mean? Like, and it negates the fact that this kid has been brought up in an orphanage. Like he's also, Oliver is also scrappy. He's the kid that got booted out for asking for more. He's portrayed as too innocent. And I think, no, it just, that doesn't work for me. Like, I think he should be this number should be a little bit more crafty. That's all. And I think he can do that, but just every version of this is like, we're dancing in Covent Garden.
Yeah.
Jazz hand. No.
Yeah, I will piggyback off that where I will go. What my first note is when people who don't know musicals picture musicals where people randomly break into song and perfectly choreographed dance. This is it because the ensemble has no reason to sing this song. Up until this point, Oliver, the Orphans, Mr. Bumble, Widow Corney, the Sourberries, all have had organic reasons to sing. And out of nowhere, the entire London is now dun da 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 dun dun, and it's like what? Like we just left that wonderfully set up glorious food world that Lynn pointed out, where it's that organic song world that we've now gone into classic golden age musical moment, and it doesn't work. You clashes, and you're right. I think it works if you change the song slightly and make it a song of Dodger singing, not the entire ensemble. Have Dodger sing it with him, slowly but surely pipering the rest of the pickpockets, and having them entice Oliver into the world of their pickpocketing. Like it's that kind of Faustian devil song of look, it's kind of fun, like we kind of just, and you kind of get that sneak peek of pick-a-pocket later on.
But it's that you can do a counterpoint. You could have people unknowingly being pickpockets singing another tune. There's so much potential for this.
Yes.
And I like the idea that it highlights community and that you're part of our family. But what is the family? Like
it's not the entire East End of London. The family he's selling Oliver is the pickpocket family, the Charlie Sloanes and the
you just said it. It's a sales job.
It is.
It's a sales job, and it comes off as a used car salesman instead of a really good salesman.
You know Lynn, what do you think of Consider Yourself?
I can understand why it's there in this musical of its time. We're thinking about it from a point of view of 2020, where we have been educated by their musicals and know how things fit in, etc. And you're right, there are all sorts of you've got the entire London singing a song that they have no reason to sing, but that's happening throughout this whole musical.
I know.
But I certainly can appreciate that the guile of getting him into that comfortable place of consider yourself that you're accepted and you're home and everything is fine. I can appreciate that.
Yeah. It's you need that song. It's an important song to set up the Artful Dodger. It's just the way it's directed. Autumn, you're right.
Yeah, I see Autumn's point too. So when she does this musical, I want to be in there immediately. because it's I remember Jackie Maxwell directing Gypsy as a play with music rather than as a musical.
That works.
And there's the difference. There is the difference.
And it is like, Bart was working with Littlewood, and that's what Littlewood was doing.
There you go.
Doing plays with music. I mean, Oh, What a Lovely War is not a musical.
No, it isn't. No.
It is a play with music.
That's right.
Perfect. Well said. All right. My number one is Who Will Buy?
So what am I to do to keep the sky so blue? There must be someone who will buy. Who will buy?
Wonderful morning, such a sky you never did see. Who will tie it up with a ribbon and put it in a box for me? There'll never be a day so sunny it could not happen twice. Where is the man with all the money? It's cheap at half the price.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah. So I have two parts to it because I like the first part of the song which is what Bart was going for, which is the haunting street cries of the morning works. And Oliver kind of walking through that and seeing this world. Where it loses me is when it becomes a big freaking production number and ramps up with the who will buy, who will buy, who will buy, grrr, who will buy, and it gets so big, and it's like, it doesn't need to be big. You keep the first part and you're good.
I'm gonna interrupt you.
Oh no.
Look it. That is not how a London street cry sounds.
But it's haunting. There's something hauntingly beautiful about that world.
Sure, but that's not accurate. It's not inaccurate.
How do you know, Autumn? You went around in Victorian London. You don't know what they were yelling.
I've lived in current day London, and current day London is a far cry from Victorian London, but it is not pretty. It is not a pretty city. It is a dirty, filthy cesspool of poverty. If you go in Covent Garden, it's not like that. It's chaos.
Mm-hmm.
It's chaos. So what would have been much better in this song was to keep the idea of the sellers, but have them trying to compete, right? Instead, oh, look at this beautiful Mayfair morning. And like, that's not where people did not go to Mayfair to buy their strawberries. It's very inaccurate. It's not something that happened. People went to the market, or they had their servants go to the market.
Mm.
That's what they did. They didn't go to the market. They wouldn't slum themselves that way.
Mm-hmm.
They would go to Covent Garden. They'd go to Spitalfields. They'd go to Smithfields for their meat. Yeah.
With their knives to grind and their eggs for sale and the flowers, 2 for a penny.
Look at My Fair Lady. I mean, My Fair Lady, that is an accurate depiction of people selling stuff in London. Mm-hmm. And they certainly probably did not sound that way. Mm-hmm. Like,
I just like the haunting opening of them kind of all just lilting in over top of each other. That part I like. The production number, the big production dance part we get at the end, no. That's where I go, not needed. We just had Papa. We just had As Long As He Needs Me. We don't need a production number here. Move the plot along and get off and already abduct Oliver. Let's go. Lynn, you gave a oh no when we said who will buy. What is your who will buy?
I love the melody of it. I love the melody of it. Mm-hmm. And just taking it in its own time. Mm-hmm. You know, it's so easy for us to say this doesn't work and this doesn't work. We have to look at it from its own time.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's also a song about hope.
Yeah.
And there's this, and I think it is a contrast. It is the opposite of the world he has just come from. Mm-hmm. Like it's shiny. It's kind of like the bling bling version of a world, right? It's like stepping out. I'll never forget when I was doing a show and I brought one of the young actors who was originally from the Philippines up to Muskoka, and he's like, I can't believe the beauty. Look at how beautiful this is. And seeing the world as something clean and other, I think is a hope button in the piece. Mm-hmm. I wish it were more about Oliver and like seeing like just people walking through Mayfair or riding horses because they did that in Mayfair, right? Or a couple of dandies walking by. That was something that happened quite frequently in Mayfair, right? Instead of bursting into, let's hop over the Mayfair fences, is not something I don't think, upper class people would do, but maybe I'm wrong. They let loose in other ways.
Who knows? I love it. Okay, so Lynn, your first 2 were My Name and Papa.
Papa was number 3.
Okay, so what's your number 2?
Number 2 is I Shall Scream.
If your hand is close, I'll press it. Yes, you like it, come confess it. Yes, you do.
No, I don't.
Yes, you do.
I shall scream. I shall scream. Till they hasten to my rescue, I shall scream.
Since there's nobody that's near us who could see us or could hear us, if I ask you, can I kiss you? Say, what will my pretty miss do?
I shall scream, scream, scream.
Oh, that didn't make my list. I do like it though. It's fun. But it makes
It's
no
fun,
sense.
but it comes from two characters that are developed only for the song, and then you don't see them again.
Yeah. Well, you see them in Act 2, but the song comes from, there's a scene in the 48 movie that's very similar to this scene where it's them in the parlor flirting it up. And you do need to set them up to become a couple, because in Act 2, they're the ones that get the locket that they bring to Mr. Brownlow. So you do need to do some
a couple for that.
Okay, but I just thought it was
locket.
Yeah.
So you need to
become a couple for that. I just thought it was silly.
It is silly. It's over the top. It's ridiculous. You don't need it, which is why they keep shortening it in all the revivals. Like if you see the original cut, it was like a 3-verse song. And by the time you get to the 2009 revival, it's like 1 verse and we're done. Like it's a very quicker version. But I do agree. It is one where it's like the Bumbles and Corny are not important enough to really warrant a full-on love duet. But it is funny that it is a love song, and it's sung by these two innkeeper and his wife, basically, and they're flirting with each other, and it's cute and funny, and it's a weird love duet. Like you get a lot of love songs and shows that's about young love, or it's about parents looking back on love. And then you got these two more mature characters having a love song.
I don't think they're in love.
Oh, they're definitely they're flirtatious, but they're not in love, because we see their marriage is not happy.
Well, that's not a love song.
But to them, it's a love song in the beginning. We know it doesn't.
Song of seduction.
Yeah,
it's a flirt song.
Yeah,
it's a sex song. I'd call it a lust song.
Yeah. It's a lust song for Bumble. For Widow Corny, it's her class song, where she's seeing Bumble as a way to move up the ladder, like you saw in the BBC version.
Oh,
Widow Corny, she marries Bumble for class to move herself up the line.
Of course she does, but that again, these are tropes that Dickens comes back to. Mm-hmm. And I agree with Lynn. I don't like the song either. It's definitely on my skip list. I'm like, whatever. Who needs that? But I understand that in the larger scheme of things, Bard was almost staying true to the Dickensian way of writing, where he gave a lot of credit to these sub-characters and fleshed them out. Mm-hmm. But in a musical format,
doesn't work.
Well, you have to sit through it, don't you? You have to like.
Well, there's a reason why it got cut from the movie.
Yeah,
when they did the film,
they cut the Intaker song too in the movie.
They did.
The Intaker, not the Intaker, the Undertaker.
Parlor, the Sourberries. That's your funeral. They cut that, and like if you watch the movie, they smash cut from Oliver, the song Oliver, to Boy for Sale. It's a very sharp edit.
Great, it's perfect. That is great. Mm-hmm. Because we don't need to sit and watch Bumble and Corny go at it.
Fair enough. Wonderful. Autumn, what is your number 2?
I agree. That
I Shall Scream is your number 2 as well.
Yeah, and it's just annoying. And in the age of consent and things like that, it's, I don't know. It's one of those things. It's like, I don't think we need to go there. There's it's already problematic with the abuse, and I don't think it's
But Bumble does ask, can he kiss her? So he does ask for consent.
Yeah, I know, but
he's flirtatious with the I Shall Scream.
I don't know. I don't know. I'd cut it.
Fair enough. All right. Lynn, your number 3 was Pa. My number 2 was Consider Yourself. So my number 3 is I Do Anything.
Would you rob a shop?
Anything,
Would you risk the drop?
anything,
Though your eyes go pop
anything,
when you come down plop.
and everything we risk. Like with him to keep you in the swing. Yes, we do anything, anything for you.
Because
Ah,
this song has no purpose. It lost its purpose when it was, because it was meant to be a love duet for Oliver and Bet that they were going to then reprise in Act 2 after Fine Life reprise. And once you reduce Bet's role to being a highlighted extra, there's no reason for this song. You get the whole point of that scene with Nancy's Fine Life song that Peter Coe always championed over I Do Anything. But it was Bart that kind of really kept the song in because he liked it so much and liked that little Easter egg of Bet and Oliver together. But ultimately, you could cut it, or I like what they did in the movie. Once again, coming back to the movie, they were smart, where they moved Fine Life to the bar to make an intro song to Nancy, and then you use I Do Anything as the setup song for the Nancy Oliver relationship, which works on screen.
Yeah.
So if you split the songs versus having them in the same scene together, but if you split them and have them as two different moments in the film, it works. So I think if you're going to keep the song going forward, you have to do some restructuring or cut it out, because yes, it's a well-known song and we all grew up hearing people sing it, but it's like not necessary. It's a fluffy song. It's like, considering we've just had a lot of grittier lyrics and songs that come before it, this is like fluff.
It'd be great to have a Fine Life like lullaby that Nancy sings to Oliver. It does need to be something between them, but I think it should be something that comes back, or something akin to As Long as He Needs Me. That's a lullaby that solidifies their relationship, because otherwise it comes from nowhere in the music.
True. This song does solidify their relationship.
And it needs to, although it doesn't in a really cutesy way. I'm kind of like, well, how did this relationship build? Like, it's seemingly
out of nowhere.
Yeah. So I think, maybe having like building in a scene with them, and then, letting us see what Nancy sees in Oliver and vice versa would be good.
Lynn, what do you think of I Do Anything?
I can understand why it's there, after reading the liner notes and that kind of that. It reminded me of Tobias' song in Sweeney Todd to Mrs. Lovett. Couldn't harm you, not while I'm around.
Yeah, no.
Well, that sets up all sorts of things. But in this one, I can appreciate it, but it can be. I can also appreciate it can be cut.
I think either cut it or restructure to make it their song.
Yes, make it work better.
Yeah, exactly. All right, we're now to the final question of the episode. We've made it here. This show, does it deserve to be revived? Does it still have a place? Lynn, we'll start with you.
Jesus. Well, in the age of Me Too, I think a lot of women, a lot of people would be offended by this, by the battered aspect of Nancy, by the battering aspect of Bill Sykes, of the dishonesty, etc. They would the moral center of our universe that is offended by practically everything that isn't PC would be offended by this show, and yet, As Long as He Needs Me is a perfect song for any age of abusive women. I think the musical is okay as a historical example of what musicals were like 60 years ago, and how the musical has adapted and changed over time. And I don't think you get rid of quote unquote museum pieces because they've passed their best by date. I think this has things to say. And and certainly the whole idea of Nancy and Bill are timeless.
Yeah.
They're timeless. And that's the unfortunate thing. And you don't say, oh, I don't want to look at that again. Phooey.
Well
Phooey.
done. Phooey indeed. Autumn, your thought.
I say double phooey. I think art is meant to challenge us. I don't think we should be cleaning it up. Who cares if there are things that challenge us to think and engage the world more critically and with more empathy?
Honey, a lot of people would say that, you know?
Of course they would, but what are we supposed to do? Just create clean art that is in neat little boxes? That is not the purpose of art. Art is meant to challenge, to show us ugliness and the seedy underbelly of human nature. And that's why, you go back to Dickens, and yeah, if you want to call him anti-Semitic, or how has society changed? How were conversations like what he put on the page a catalyst for change, right? And I think if we don't have the struggle, we cannot have the art. It would be boring. Life is full of struggle. We cannot negate it. So put it out there. I think it's a great musical. I think there are some very bad directorial choices that have been made. I've seen a couple of versions of this that are very clean. It can tend towards the schmaltzy, but it's not written that way. There are that are, but I think you need to find a way through it to find the dirt, because it is dirty and it's not neat. And yeah, I think it should be done. And I think, we need to look at Victorian London, because, there are a lot of parallels to what we are doing today. We have not learned from our cycles, and that is the problem. And everything is in chaos now because we are not learning from our cycles.
Yep.
Period.
End game. And my final thoughts are, I agree. This musical is a classic. Like, this will always have a place on stage, especially in London. Like, every 5, 6, 7 years, there'll be a revival that's done. I mean, I guarantee you Cameron Mackintosh is already working on one. Like, this show was in 2009. Give it another few years after COVID, it'll be back. It's also a great way to introduce children to musical theater that's not Disney. Like, don't take them to Lion King. Take them to see Oliver. Like,
I just show my kids this. And
did you show your kids the movie?
Oh yeah, I bought it for them. They were very confused why there was an intermission, which was hilarious. But they liked it. Like, they got it, and we had a good conversation about it. I think, if you're doing it, I think we should tag Cameron Mackintosh in this one, because I want to direct it. I don't know if mine will be completely child friendly.
That's okay. That's okay. And Adam, you're rightly pointed out, this is a great discussion piece. It opens the door to the discussions, especially with children, of poverty, domestic abuse, like anti-Semitism, all that type of stuff. This musical opens that door to that great conversations you could have.
But kids don't look at, like, my kids didn't look at Fagin and go, oh, he's a bad man because of his, his culture or his religion.
They learn that from adults.
They learn it from adults. So if you open children's eyes and go, well, this is what some adults would think about this. And my kids would be like, well, he was just being resourceful. He was doing what he had to do to live. Like, we should all go back and live as children.
Yes.
Without people telling us how to think. We would be so much better off.
Yeah. And and my final thought as well is that it needs to be dark. We don't direct it as camp. You cut some of those big production-y elements. Cameron Mackintosh doesn't need to be a big spectacle. You can make this show work in one of your smaller, intimate theaters in London, where it's a little bit more grimy. and it will work. That's what made that BBC version so great, is that it is grimy. Everybody's teeth are rotten looking. Nobody looks clean. It's great.
So good.
That's what needs to happen.
All of the BBC versions of Dickens novels are fantastic for that reason. They're dirty. They're dirty, dirty, dirty.
Yeah, they're all dirty. It's great. Okay, so now it's time for some closings. Thanks everybody for listening in. Lynn, thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you for asking me. I loved it. This is great.
Anytime you're coming back, definitely going to get you back in for Carousel, because we definitely need you for that.
I love it.
Yeah. And so first off, big shout out to thank you to our wonderful theme music composer, Mr. Brody Weld.
Yay.
Who is still creating music while he is in quarantine with his family. He has released a new single called Home Decor, which is a rap about fatherhood and household furniture of all things. That got his inspiration. It's great.
Pretty witty.
It is.
I have to say.
Right?
Yeah, it's great.
And then the other big thing is follow us at Before the Downbeat on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Every week we're either posting a fun fact or a clue about our next show. And as we talked about in our first 2 episodes, we have the big announcement of we now have a Patreon page, which is where you can donate to us on a monthly basis, and we will give you some goodies in return. I won't go through all the tiers again because it takes a while. So instead, I'll tell you what you get overall. You get movie musical commentaries. Maybe you'll make us watch Oliver, and we'll do a commentary for you on it. We'll be doing a monthly theater news review, as well as a top 10 topic list, whether it's top 10 female musical heroines, top 10 soliloquy songs. Who knows? You get to choose the topic depending on your tier. You also can donate and be able to get your voice heard on the podcast when you send in one of your audio clips of a musical of your choosing from our season list. So go on Patreon at Before the Downbeat, check that out. Lynn, where can people find you?
Oh God, well, they can do slotkinletter.com.
Perfect.
And they can see my my blog. It has, of course, been rather quiet of late, but I have done some stuff. There's a show that I reviewed called Life in a Box, which I saw in the theater, and now Matt Finlan and Landon Doak, but they have written the music and the lyrics for this show and the book, and they're doing them in segments every Friday on Instagram, Landon Doak. And it's at every Friday at 4:20 because it's a stoner musical, and 4:20 is very important. I only read about that. I wouldn't have known about those things. And so they're doing the musical in segments, and they are divine, are lovely. So I'll do reviews of shows that open and closed just because of the virus, and because I procrastinate too much, I will finally get to that stuff and the comments and things, but you can check all of my reviews, past, and stuff is there.
Love it. Fantastic. Autumn, where can people find you?
All the regular places. Autumn DM Smith on Facebook and the Instagram. And my business name, Littlewood Smith.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And you can always find me at Mackenzie Horner. Look at on all social media platforms: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Look for the red-haired guy. You can find me really easily. And then from there we're gonna see you all next week when we reveal our next show, which is one Autumn has a very special connection to.
Yes.
But until then, thanks so much for listening, Lynn. We can't wait to have you back on again. Until next time, everybody, stay healthy, stay safe, and stay inside. Thanks.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.